before we get into this, there was a, wow, there's a fall over this chair here. Okay. Before we get into this, just there was a question Chris had about his robot in terms of how is he going to animate that mouth and blend shapes. We didn't really get into blend shapes so much. We might have to save that for when we come back from the break, just in terms of adding them, or I might do a video over the break that you guys can refer to. But since we haven't covered it, then I wouldn't expect it to be included in your rigging for Monday. But we'll see. Maybe we can get into it a little bit today. So let me see. Open scene. Bear with me. All right, so Chris's robot thing here. So with this guy, we've got this kind of head. It's like a dense head. It's a super dense head. No offense, but super dense head with not a lot of support. Like if I wanted to animate that mouth, I might have approached this area a little bit differently, just a little bit lighter, with a little bit more consideration to the shapes I might need to make with this. So maybe radiate out kind of more of a circular kind of structure out from there. So I could kind of move that around and shape it easily. Because that's not the way it is, Nendroid textured it. Getting the different shapes out of that would be extremely challenging. I'd say impossible, but you know, it's not CG. Anything's possible, but it'd be very, very time consuming to get like very basic shapes out of that.
So what would be the best the original shape from the mouse?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be just like rectangle. It could be like a circle.
Yeah, so you kind of wanted to follow the muscle groups. Now, unfortunately, because his mouth is so close to the eyes as well, there's just going to be a lot of stretching. It'd be a very tricky thing to animate that, just because of the way things are positioned. So even if you did have a different topology, it would still be kind of a tricky thing to get nice, fluid, smooth shapes out of that. So instead, what I did was remove the mouth altogether. So I kept it's the same model, I just took the mouth out, so all the UVs and everything are the same, so the textures technically should be all the same. And I created a very simple head control just so I could see what's happening, so I was rotating the head around a bit. And then I've added this guy right here. So it's a mouth control. Now what this is doing, I should probably set the project so that it links up with stuff. Let me see. Set project. Let me just reopen it. All right. So basically what's under here, if I hit the down key and hit H, no, let's see. Where is it? Here it is. It's a projection node. So far when we're creating our file textures, we're using file texture, right? But there's also file projections. If you look at the iVideos, it's the same kind of approach. Except instead of projecting color, what I'm doing is I'm projecting displacement, height information. So if we were to look at that, there we go. So it's projecting in height information. I also included just some little kind of blemishes and stuff around that into the height maps. I just wanted to see if it would work. So I have these three height maps that I'm using here that I just created in Photoshop quickly yesterday morning when I was testing this out. Probably just need the three. So let me see, source images. So again, we have kind of the closed mouth. Again, I added in a little bit of edge wear. I don't know if that's working or not, but maybe could have more. Circular mouth. Now for the circular mouth, I kept it the same shape as my closed mouth, or the normal mouth, and then kind of that D-shaped smile mouth or whatnot. Just making sure the edge wear kind of matches the shape for each one. And the reason why I kind of kept it the same dimensions was so that I can animate them into place. So if I were to turn on IPR, So, and also as a projection, which is cool, you know, I could take this and move it over the entire model, have a little bit of offset in my animation. I could have a little bit of drag and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. You can throw in different angles and things like that as well. You know, I could just even move it all the way over to the side of his face if I wanted to, I guess. Back and left and right. So, you know, it gives me a little bit more flexibility than just having the topology change. So let me just put that back though. And then on this controller though, I also have this, the ability to change. So I can go into my oval shape, which is 0.5, or 1, sorry. And I could also transition into my big D smile shape. Now, I kept them the length of the mouth just so that I have the ability to then, you know, animate into that shape if I wanted to. So it'll create a little bit more flexibility and not maybe feel like it's just switching between 3 images. So I can actually have a little bit of offset and stuff as it's changing. So it'll come across as being like a bit more organic as it's doing its thing. I can't do a super slow-mo transition. It still needs to be relatively quick, like maybe 2 to 5 frames, but it'll still look, you know, pretty natural, I think, as it's doing that. But again, I do have some flexibility because it is being projected on to kind of really get it, kind of go crazy with where that placement is going to be, and not have to worry about my geometry so much.
So is this feature only working cutting the mouse part? It cannot actually work in the eyes part as well?
I was thinking about doing that with the eye.
Kind of an extrusion, then you can animate the eyes as well.
You could, yeah, you could. You could even create like a blink stages as well. So in that case, it would be very similar to the eye video I did, the one with the projected textures. But instead of using the color, we're using displacements. Now you would still need to have projections for the color as well if you want that to move all together. So that's where it gets a little bit trickier because you have to. But I think I cover that in the eye video about sharing the same projection node for all of the different layers.
Is this feature works with the eyes?
It could. Yeah, I didn't do it for that, but it could in theory.
But because this one's like cutting, I can do extrusion out, like extrude out. So
sure.
Probably it's just like one value inverted.
Yeah, you could do that with the eyes, and they can move around and stuff. Like
yeah,
that would be awesome. Yeah, that'd be neat. Cool. And you could even have eyelids included in the displacement too, so they could have different stages of blinks and stuff, and that could be neat. Anyhow, so I'll save the file. You can check it out. It's pretty straightforward. It's just going into the displacement channel, this projection node. So if we were to look at the shader very quickly, and then we'll get started. So very simple. You've got your shading group, which has the redshift displacement. So we went through this several times. I have it recorded with the tank as well. So that creates this redshift displacement node, which I have inverted to the negative just because I did it as a black background, white mouth. So anything that's white gets raised, which is why I changed it around a little bit. But if you're going to have the eyes too, yeah, then we're going to get into a layered texture. So it'd be similar to that video that I created in terms of having a layered texture to put all your projection nodes. I'd have to look into that. So this goes into the texture. So instead of the actual texture itself going into the displacement, you're plugging in the projection node into the displacement, essentially. And that just allows it to work, and you're good. Easy peasy. All right. And basically, you'll notice I did create a visual representation of that with this slider here. Did I break it? I don't know. No, it's still going. With this slider, basically those are just 2 blend shapes. So we have that oval shape, we've got a D shape, and then the default is this kind of square shape. And as I modify that, it's just going through the blend shapes I've created, just so visually I can see what's happening. You don't have to do that was me, I probably wouldn't have done that. Really, I would have just used the sliders. But you know, sometimes people like seeing a visual representation of the shape being done. So cool. All right, that's that. That's fun. I can even have like teeth or something like that in there. And,
So in this case, is the depth of the geometry for like the face for geometry matter if I do like low poly?
no, it wouldn't matter. No, because it's the displacement that. So it'll tessellate it at render time. So I was getting some noise in here. So this is a 1K texture. It might be better as a 2K because I think it was getting some of the bitmap fringing and the anti-aliasing of the white. Because this is kind of the default I got with this, which isn't very good. Let me just make this bigger. Not that big. So if we look at this, so we're getting all the fringe stuff I put in there. That's looking cool. The default though, not so good. So if I go under the shape node, red shift right there. So the default minimum edge length is 4. 4 was giving me this. It was really kind of chunky and pixelated and not very good looking. So we want to reduce that edge length so that it gives us more detail along the. It gives us more detail when it calculates the displacement through the tessellation. So 0.01 seemed to be pretty good in terms of that. So it's pretty decent, especially from a distance. All right, look away. Don't scrutinize at this point. Cool. So that's that. I'll throw that into the resources. You can check it out. Cool. All right. So let's get into our PUBG Lone Survivor character. This morning there was a question too about rigging a tail or rigging a. Let me just see here.
One question for the robot body, like do I need to add the rigging for that body?
Rigging? If do you need it to animate?
Not really.
Oh, he does. I thought he was climbing a building or something.
Yeah, they will, but I don't know. I can't imagine how the body could be.
This body.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, just one joint probably.
Like a drone.
Yeah.
For like the whole body.
Yeah, because it's like a fridge or something moving
Yeah.
around, so it's probably not going to deform so much. Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Same as face, right?
And his face would be a different controller.
Yeah.
So it's a cool thing that it is a sphere. So once you set that up, you can have that rotate around and everything's good. Cool. All right, so that's cool.
Question, please.
Yeah.
Where can we find your toy to do the exercise?
Okay, yeah. If you want, you could use the same one I'm using. So I'll just give you the file without the textures. So we'll start where we left off last class. So let me see here. So systems, there it is here. Excuse me. So I think group A, this is you guys. Last class was the 15th. This one had a bit of a problem though. Here, let me just open this up first. I noticed that when we were doing the tube the other day, I think I duplicated the chest control by accident. So let's see, I think this one's a little bit before then. So hopefully it doesn't have that. Oh, it doesn't have a chest control. Stupid thing. Yeah, so I'll just have to. So I'm gonna give you this file, but let me just fix it before I give it to you guys. So it's this one. Yeah, there was a duplicated chest control there. And unfortunately, it's not just a simple matter of removing it, so. All right. So this is where we left off. So I'm just going to single select that. Yeah, so I got these two chest controls here. I think one is actually controlling the geometry though, and the other one has the head and everything in it. So it's a bit of a mess that happened near the end of class. When I saved this off, I must have overridden the good one. So in here we have that group which has the cluster that we're looking at with the tubes setting. So let me delete that. And I think I'm just going to take this chest joint and put it here under this chest. And I'm going to take this chest joint, which isn't doing anything, and delete it. And then I could also remove this control. And now we're good. I think we're good. Let me just, there we go, we're good. So I'm going to save this off. So File, Save Scene As. Start. Whoops. So it's going to go under Resources, CA Resources, Systems, 1. Chris. Let me create a week 7 folder. Week 7 already. I can't believe it. It's almost over. That's awesome. It's like a quarter over. Can you guys believe it? Super fast. Yeah. All right, so that's there. If you guys wanted to follow along, you can use mine, or you can use your own if you wanted to as well. There was a question last class about what do you do when you have multiple elements. For example, there was a robot where there's multiple pivots in the foot that need to move in order for it to bend. So this should hopefully kind of solve or give you a solution for that as well. All right, so I've got that open right here. Yep, here it is. So I'm going to use this file as well. What else do I have open? I've got this one. I'm going to delete that so don't save. I've got this one. I'm going to save my script. Save scene. Oh yeah, and get rid of that. And do I have? I don't. Let me just reopen the final one from. All right. So we'll do a little bit of weight painting first, and then what we'll do is we'll get into the arm. We'll finish the arm off by break, which will be 2:30. Take a 15-minute break, and then we'll do the fingers and just finish off the rig, and we'll be done. Let me just close that. So weight painting. So we got to do a bunch of things just through the chest, just to get everything kind of connected and staying together. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the wrap tool that I used at home isn't available here. So, I missed this too when I was binding stuff. Let me just add that one in right here to this guy. So skin, bind skin. There we go. So that's all done now. All right. So let's see where we left off. So here, so we got this kind of working, but it's not so hot. With the feet, I think the feet are looking, they're okay. I mean, we could do something maybe with that pant cuff, perhaps. And then for the jaw, right now the jaw just controls almost the entire face. So we got to do something there too. So I'm going to start by painting weights on the shirt. Now when we're doing this, you just want to get it as smooth as possible. It is a toy. I want to be able to have a little bit of flexibility, but not let it look like he's wearing an actual shirt. He is made out of plastic. So I don't want things bunching up or whatnot. I just want to give it enough flexibility that it can move subtly and still feel kind of plastic-like when it's doing it. So what I'm going to do is select that. I'm going to select the COG. And I'm just going to isolate this, so Control 1. There we go. Now, all of the pieces, I mentioned this before, but he's got 50 different pieces. All of those other pieces that are part of this section, so the tie clip, and the straps for the backpack, those are just going to go along for the ride. I don't need to paint any weights on those. We can bind them and we can copy weights, but I might want to use a deformer just to control my volume a little bit more, called a delta mush deformer. And getting that working 100% between all those different objects can be a little bit tricky. So we're going to wrap those pieces on instead, and it'll just follow whatever the underlying geometry is doing. So it's a bit of an easier, quicker approach that just works better as well, which is good. So anyhow, so let's go into this. I'm going to just bend him forward just a little bit. We got a bit of a crease there I want to fix up. To paint weights, the easiest way to get into your paint weights options is to just right click on your geometry. Once something is bound, you now have a paint skin weights box here. So I'm just going to go into that. It will show you all of the, yep.
Sorry, with unpleasant profile.
Okay, what's going on?
How do you
Bring that up?
Bring that up.
Yeah, so if you right click on that, there you go. And then if you go right, yeah, that's it. That's the one. Perfect. Yep. So we get a list. Now with this list, we can isolate various elements, which works good if you have, say, 100 things in here just by giving a wildcard. So let's say I'm just looking specifically for the chest. I could just type in star, chest, star, and it'll just isolate that one component. So again, pretty good if I need to do maybe all the index fingers. I could just type in star, index, star, and just only the index finger joints will appear. So make it easy to isolate various elements out. To remove that, I can just get rid of that, and everything will pop back down again. Now with the painting, we've got a couple different paint operations. We've got replace. Replace just replaces whatever the current value is with whatever your value is set to. So right now my value is set to 1, which is right here. Sometimes when you're painting, now it is pressure sensitive. If you have a Cintiq pen, whoops, my hand hit that. So it is pressure sensitive, so you can kind of get very kind of fine-tuned stuff if you are using your pen. For now, I'm just going to use the mouse, and sometimes for this, I'll just kind of very quickly use the mouse to kind of get it going. I might use opacity. What opacity does, it allows me to layer my brush strokes. So for example, if I have this set down to maybe 0.25, it'll take me 4 kind of clicks to reach whatever my maximum value is set to. Now the good thing with doing this, if you wanted to layer your brush strokes, is that it never goes over the maximum. And that's kind of an important thing with the way Maya calculates how much weight each vertex gets. Each vertex, because the vertices on your geometry that's actually being bound to your joints. And the weight values on those vertices always has to equal 100%. So if you only have one joint controlling your geometry, it's 100% to that one joint. In this case, we got 3 joints. As we kind of smooth things out, those weight values get redistributed between all of those joints, always equaling 100%. Now, I'm just stressing that because using replace, and if I want to layer my strokes, it never goes over 100%. There's add, which does something similar. Basically, you just choose a value and it just keeps adding by, say, 20%, if it's 0.2 or 30%. The problem with this, though, is that it does have the ability to go over that value of 1, which is impossible, but it does. And what it does when that happens is it starts throwing those points off into space when your character starts moving around. Yes, not pretty. So again, if you want to layer your strokes, just use opacity and replace. Scale does the opposite. So scale will remove at a percentage. So if I want to go 20% removing with each stroke, I would type in a value of 0.8. So it's taking off 20% with every stroke, for example. But again, for the most part, we're just using replace. So right now, let's say I want to go into my stomach, my chest here, and we got our different brushes here. I'm going to just maybe use the first one, and I'm just going to kind of feather in. There we go, just a little bit more weight in through here. There we are. I can always paint away from an object. You got to be careful with that. I do it all the time, but I always suggest don't do it in the beginning. Because when you paint away from an object, so for example, if I use 0 and just kind of paint some of this stuff out, just pure black, we don't really have any control over where those verts are going to get spread to as you're painting away. Because don't forget, they always have to equal 100%. So as I paint this to 0, and these verts get redistributed to the other two joints, I don't really know what the distribution values are going to be. And sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not. It's kind of a mixed bag in terms of what you get. So usually I'll always select a joint and add into the value. So I'm just kind of pulling from other areas. So it's a little bit faster that way. But anyhow, so let me just go back to my chest. Control again. I can. I'll just remove that down. So I can also smooth out everything by holding down Shift. That'll smooth out my weights. Or I could also use smooth. This smooth section here allows me to then flood smooth that, which kind of very equally distributes those weights in a nice kind of a nice fall off. So now when I move that around, I should get something a little bit nicer. That looks pretty good. Cool. So I probably want my stomach to have maybe just a little bit less influence here. I probably want that hip joint to have a little bit more influence. Again, that area shouldn't necessarily come off unless I want it to separate. I don't think I do that. So maybe I'll go into my hips and just give this a little bit more weight down here. So let me just paint this side. We can also mirror our weight. So when it's something like this where it's really tricky to get into an area, what I might do is I might just focus on left, in this case, left of origin with a little bit going past the center line. Yeah.
How you change the size of the brush?
Yeah, so the B key. So it's just like using your soft mod tool. So the B key allows me to do that. Sorry? Yep.
So you're painting white. So how do you go to the reverse? How do you do the reverse?
Yeah, so again, without pushing any buttons, the value you're painting is going to be decided by the value. You can invert whatever that value is by holding down Control. And Control will do the exact opposite. Cool. All right, so let me just flood that, flood smooth that. There we go. Cool.
Once you click outside of this box to change the rating, and that interface disappears, how do you go back?
Like if I do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How I go back?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you just right click on your geometry again and just go back into paint weights. And, yeah. All right, so that's looking pretty good. So, well, let's see. That's not quite so good down here. So I might want to just paint this area away from the stomach altogether. So I can also create masks and paint within masked areas just by selecting the region I want to mask off. Down here where the stomach's kind of mushing things around, I'm just going to expand my face selection, which we've gone through before, but that's Shift and the greater than or less than keys. And I'm going to convert that into vertices. So vertices act as a mask. So if I go back into my paint options with the vertices selected, it's only going to, whatever I do will only affect that region. So I can actually go in very easily, and let's see, so that's the hips, stomach's down here. I want to paint away the stomach. So what I can do is maybe just replace this, and I don't have to worry about kind of going up into this other area, perhaps. There's a diamond there, what's that? And then I can maybe flood smooth that. Cool. All right, so that's that. If I wanted to mirror my weights, I just have to make sure I zero out my controls to go back to a default position first. Select my geometry. And if I go into my skin menu, we've got mirror skin weights option box. Just got to make sure you're mirroring across the YZ axis. If your character is facing camera, X is the symmetrical axis. So the ones right in the middle are Y and Z. So we just want to make sure we're mirroring across the YZ axes. And in this case, I'm going positive side to negative side. So positive to negative and apply. There we go. So now when I'm moving this around, everything should be, well, that doesn't look symmetrical. Let's do it again. So positive to negative, mirror skin weights. All right, let's see what happens. Why is that not, am I not zeroed out? It didn't, oh, maybe.
Maybe you should press the mirror.
No, it did mirror it. It's just, it didn't mirror it. I just didn't do a very good job. So it is mirrored, but I can tell too just by going in here, and I can see, yeah, it is actually mirrored. It's just like not a good job. So this is what I'm talking about when you start removing weights. When I was removing weights down here, it was redistributing them to mostly the chest, so which I didn't want to have happen. I wanted them more distributed to maybe the hips. So I'm gonna have to repaint that perhaps just a bit. So let me just go here. This one has no feathering, so maybe I'll replace with this. There we go, just be a little bit, just 100% all the way around there. Let me just smooth it. Cool, and then let me just go back into the chest and maybe, so the stomach's gonna end up having very little influence perhaps. All right, but you only want to get it so far. There's some deformers we can use to get it go even further with it. So let me smooth that. All right, so let's say that's pretty good. He'll never just bend with that one joint. It's probably going to be with the two. That's pretty good. It's okay. So, you know, it's not the best, but let's say that's as far as I can get it within my time frame. So there's a deformer we can use that will just smooth all that stuff out, all that kind of junky, lumpy stuff. So I would just go into my default pose again. So that's the key. Always go back to your default when you add new stuff. Select your jump. Yeah, so to do that, yeah, you just select your controllers and you just zero out the rotations. Yep. All right, let's do this. So let me mirror the weights one more time. There we go. And then there's this deformer called the delta mush. So under deform, we've got this guy right near the top here, delta mush. And what that does is it allows me to preserve my volume. So let me just go forward here a bit. So you can see, let me turn, so once you add a deformer, it gets added to your inputs here. So this is what this looks like without the delta mush on. This is what it looks like with the delta mush set to 10. And if I want, I could go even higher just to smooth that out even more. So, you know, maybe that's looking a little bit better for me. So I'm getting a nice smooth kind of transition now over that area. Now I can see it's moving my bottom of my shirt just a little bit. If you don't want that, which I don't think I do, you can also paint where the influence of your deformers are. So this goes for all deformers. So it's the same process. You just select your geometry. And I just want to paint away or have this area have no influence under the delta mush, just so that it doesn't deform. So I select my geometry, right click, and then down here, we have this paint section directly in the middle of that menu. This will give me all of the different things I can actually paint. And I'm going to paint my delta mush deformer. So it's very much like painting your smooth weights. So you have a value. The default is 1. And then basically you can give it a percentage. So right now my delta mush is set to 30. So, if I give this a value of 0.5, anything within that 0.5 will then have a value of 15. So I can reduce where my influence is based off of this map, essentially. So sometimes you want the delta mush to have very little influence, like on your fingers, for example, or areas that bend, like ankles and sometimes. And delta mush does a great job of preserving volume, but sometimes it prevents things from properly rotating. And fingers, you want it to have more of a jointed type of look as well. So usually you want to paint those areas off. So I'm just going to paint it off altogether. And again, it's just like painting weights. So I'm just going to go, around the bottom here. Now I should have probably isolated this, but I'll just take my chances. Cool. And then I'm just going to flood smooth that. So I'll just flood smooth that once I've just painted this. All right, so smooth and flood a couple times. All right. So now when I'm moving this around, that bottom area should stay pretty locked. Yeah, it does. It stays pretty locked down because it's not getting any of that delta mush deformer information. That looks really good, actually. That's better than this morning. Yep.
So the whole point for the wave paint is once the character, their band or form, they won't have any wrinkles.
Yeah, you don't want, unless you want wrinkles. Usually you want it to be, less lumpy. You want it to be as smooth as it can be without looking unnatural. Because basically any kind of, say, musculature or any of that stuff, that's usually added in as either a deformer or like a texture. You have like animated displacement maps and things like that. So if your underlying surface is all lumpy, it's like UVs, right? If your UVs aren't nicely laid out and smooth and it's difficult to paint or add in those details. Same with your skin weights. If your skin weights are irregular or lumpy, when you're adding in those extra deformations, it'll inherit those lumpy values as well. So yeah.
So when I develop my controller values, and it is
That's interesting.
it's not going to be the default.
Did you freeze your transformations when you added all that stuff in?
Transformation for the control.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll control Z back.
Yeah. And then you're gonna have to freeze trans on that. Now, unfortunately, you can't freeze transformations on anything that has something inside it that has any kind of weighting information, like a joint. So what you might have to do is just temporarily take your joint out and put it into maybe the orient group, freeze transformations, and then put it back in after, just so that you can. Yeah.
And for the wave paint part, like black part and white part, black part is more stay, like not easy to
Has no influence. Yeah, black is no influence, and then white is 100% influence to whatever.
which is like more flexible, that part.
In this case, it would be more flexible with the delta mush in particular. Yeah, it's flexible, but it's also maintaining volume. So it's so if I were to switch to no delta mush, so let me just bend. So if I were to put the see what it looks like with no delta mush. It's going to look kind of lumpy. There's some irregular stuff in through here, and it's a bit too sharp of a crease. Just doesn't look very good. So as I add in that delta mush, everything just becomes smoother and better. So before circular eyes, this was my favorite new tool, but it's several years old now. So yeah.
Because in the solution for my question just now is move my control through out.
No, so see freeze transformations first. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to say that there's a skin cluster attached. What we have to do is go under here and so take this, just move it up to the orient group. And just make sure it's smooth. Take this, and now we should be able to freeze. There's all this You're good. Keep going.
No, it's still a weird.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, what happened? So let's drop the skin cluster to see what it actually looks like, right? Now, are your joints in the right spot, or are they not in the right spot?
I think so. There's going right there. Maybe the controller is not in the position, but I can push it back.
Just rewind it.
Rebind my body, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so that's that. So let's attach the other stuff, which are the straps and the tie-in, all that jazz. All right, so let's see here. 0. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with those deformations. That looks pretty good. So what I want to do next is just one at a time. I'm going to select the straps first, select the body second. With the new one, the CV wrap, we could do it all at once, but I noticed there was a problem doing that this morning, so we'll just do one piece at a time. We're going to go to deform, wrap. Where is it? Wrap. There it is. And what that is doing is that basically it's telling that geometry, the straps, just to go along with my underlying skin, essentially. So all that stuff will now stay together when I'm moving this around. There we go. That's decent. And then, so I'll do the tie and the tie clip. Cool. So now basically all those pieces are going to stay together as that moves perfectly.
I use this method on my belt, right?
Yeah, anything. Like for my belts, they move 100% with the hips. So this just got bounded. But things where I know there's going to be some deformation happening, then I'm going to want to use a wrap for that. So I want to do the same thing on the face. So I've got this jaw control. So if I just open this jaw up here, so we've got a head and jaw joint. So what I'm going to do is just flood everything to the head. Excuse me. I'm going to take that jaw joint there, and I'm just going to start painting the influence for that. So maybe not so much down there, maybe around here. There we go. Start painting the influence for that. Painting away where I don't want the jaw to influence. And I'm going to go smooth and start flooding that up just a bit. And again, I'm just going to replace the areas that shouldn't get any of that. Oops. Some stuff happening in here. Anyhow. And then smooth, and then flood that up just a bit. And then I'll just repeat the process one more time, just so that this is good. Yeah, it looks like there's some upper lip stuff here. If that's happening, what you could do is just select those faces. And there's this awesome tool under skin. This at one point was one of my favorite tools as well. The hammer skin weights tool. It used to be called the weight hammer, so I might refer to it as that. And what that does is it looks at the verts around your selection, and it just automatically fits it in. So in this case, that did not go so well. Let me see, where's that connected? Down here. So let me select, actually, it's tricky to see, but there's some lip stuff here. Yeah, down and through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select, and this is the upper lip, I think. Select these guys, and again, weight hammer. And it should start moving that around. So let me just expand that selection and do it again. There we go. And that's going to pop it up above. Cool. Wow. It's a unhappy mouth. All right, so what I'm going to do is just one more round of weight painting here. So this area here, I'm just going to paint this into the influence of the jaw. And again, I'm just going to smooth that out. So now when I grab that, there we go. So I got a nice little mouth opening, and it's like nom nom nom. It's eating. There we go. The shapes, if I want them to smile or frown, those would be blend shapes. So that wouldn't necessarily be with this jaw joint. So I could include the jaw into the slider that controls those shapes, but in this case, it's just an overall kind of movement for the jaw. What I might want to do, though, is also add in a wrap for my straps here. So just select these two guys, add in a wrap. So deform, wrap, and same for this. So now when this moves around, again, all that moves together. All right, that was easy. We're done. Okay, just in time too. Question?
When you're saying blend shapes, would it be like, so you would break the jaw, then do another head without a mouth that smiles?
No, not necessarily. Since you asked, I will do a blend shape or two. Just some simple ones. So let's say I want to do a smile or a frown or something like that. So first thing I'm going to probably want to do is go into the controller that will have my blend shapes. Typically I have off like sliders that you can move around. It's a little bit more like puppeteering a little bit, but in this case, just some simple library we could just add to the head control. So to add in custom shapes, what we're going to do is go to Edit, Add Attribute. So I'm on the controller, and I usually want to divide any custom attributes from existing translation attributes, translate, rotate, scale. And to do that, I use an underscore, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now the problem though is that you can't have repeating attributes with the exact same name. So if I need to do any more dividers, then my next one would have to be 11, then 12, and 13. I just have to keep adding a dash onto that. It's not very noticeable though. So not keyable, it's displayable, and add, there's my divider. And then what I'm going to do is add in maybe a smile, and let's see here. Maybe I'll do a left smile and a right smile. So left smile, and well, let's do camel case. Left smile, there we go. This is going to go from 0 to 1. And a right smile. Camel case will automatically put everything in caps with a space in between, so just make sure you are using camel case when you do this. And again, 0 to 1. So that way I can just do direct connections. It's just a quick way to connect or blend shapes. And add. All right, so I got my attributes. Next thing I want to do is add in my blend shape. Now, the old way of doing blend shapes, yeah, you would duplicate your geometry and change it up, and that's fine. Although I wouldn't advise that because it does limit things like mirroring your shapes and stuff like that. It becomes a bit more challenging. So what I would do instead is go into your sculpting menu, and we've got this cool blend shape editor right here. Also one of my favorite new things over the years. This is awesome when they brought this in. So with your geometry selected, you're creating a blend shape. There we are. Give it a name. I'll call it face shapes. The cool thing with blend shapes is that they'll blend all together. So you can have smile on one side, or frown on the other, or blinks while your character's smiling. The key though is just make sure they all exist under the same blend shape node. You don't want to have lots of different nodes. They do work better now, but I have seen instances where they don't necessarily work 100% of the time. And in previous versions of Maya, they wouldn't work at all. One would override the other. So the blend shapes do have to exist under one node. So in this case, the node is called face shapes. We're going to add a target. So this is the blend shape. And we'll give it a name. So this is going to be our left smile. Underscore smile. There we are. And I'm going to modify it. So I'm going to create my smile. So for this, I will use my grab tool maybe. I don't have to use the sculpting brushes, but it's easier if you do. I might want to mask out where the cheeks are a little bit maybe, so maybe I'll just use my masking. I don't see it, but I'll pretend it's there. I think it's working. Okay, and let's see. Yeah, it's working. It's working. Cool. So I'm just going to undo that. There we go, and just get a better handle on that. So the B key, I can move my brush around. Now I'm not going to close the mouth smile because my jaw can still close those lips. I just want to create a kind of a grin. And because I'm going to have the other side shape, I'm going to just try to not move this around too much left or right. So everything on the one side I can move, but so I think that's okay. Let me unfreeze all. And you might want your level 3 smoothing on when you do this, just so you can see what it's actually looking like. So again, I want to unfreeze all. So why did that not work? Did I unfreeze all? Oh yeah, I see. One more time, unfreeze all. I just wasn't on the right thing. There we go. So let me go with the big smile. And just fix this up just a little bit more. Maybe smooth out it just a smidge. All right, so we got that. So again, that will work with my my jaw if I wanted to. All right, so I got that. Excuse me. Now to do the right smile, it's easy. I just have to invert that target. So what I would do is I duplicate it. So we got to disable editing. Once we're done modifying it, we just turn editing off. If I want to modify it more, I just make sure I'm set to 1, and I just turn editing back on, and it lets me go and modify that again. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to duplicate it. So duplicate. There it is, target. Let's rename it. So we have our right smile. There we are. And then what we're going to do is flip it. So flip target. There we are. So now I've got a right smile and I got a left smile. And then we have our right smile and left smile attributes here. So we just have to connect them. So it's a super easy process. We open this guy up. So edit, connection editor. So we have our head control over here. This is the controlling side. The outputs is the controlling side. The inputs is the side being controlled. Just remember the words output and input, because sometimes you might push this middle button. I don't know why that's there, but it'll flop them around. So just keep that in mind. It could be an accidental thing. Custom attributes usually appear at the very bottom, but they don't seem to be there. Oh yeah, because that's not selected. Let me do that again. There they are, at the very bottom. I'm going to select my face. Select the face shapes blend shape node here and load that in. These are going to be buried under what's called the weight right here, under weight. There they are. So all we have to do is just connect the names. So it's very important to label. So left smile to left smile and right smile to right smile, and we're done. All right, so now we've got a controller that will allow me to have one side smile, the other side smile, or I can select both of them at the same time and have both sides smile. So I can have a little bit, or I can give them percentages. So maybe I want a bit more of a lopsided smile, perhaps. And then that should work with my jaw. There we go. That all works together. Nice. Oh, thanks. Super easy stuff. All right.
It might take our half day to recheck your.
No, it's like 5 minutes. All right. So that's there. Let's see. Did we do this one? I think we did. Yeah. So that's all good. All right. So for the arms, now let's see how far we get in 22 minutes. So we are going to have multiple arms. The reason for that is that besides the regular 2 arms, we're going to end up with 4 arms in total. Because we're going to have our control arm. The control arm is what's going to move the arm underneath, the bind arm, essentially. The control arm is just going to have three joints. We're going to have an upper arm, we're going to have an elbow, and we're going to that's controlling another skeleton that individually kind of rotates these different components. So the main skeleton is going to be rotating the shoulder just in 2 axes. It's going to be twisting this piece right here in X. It's going to be allowing me to rotate my arm, the elbow. Now the elbow is a hinge joint, so that's only going to be rotating, in this case, in Y. And then we're going to have an arm, a joint at the forearm, so that we could twist the forearm just a little bit, and it'll also allow me to keep the base of the hand connected in there so that it doesn't separate if I wanted to throw in just a little bit of wrist rotations and things like that. So if I go in here, I can kind of rotate that around and it's not going to fly apart and whatnot. And then on that, excuse me, wrist control, we're going to add in our finger curls and things like that. So, all right. So let's do this. So we're going to start by going into our front view, orthographic view. We are drawing joints, so we have to choose a camera angle that's going to kind of match the geometry that we're going to put the joints into. And let me go over to my rigging. Okay, so we got our joints selected. That's way too big, so let me just change this to short bone radius. I love how they keep changing stuff. All right, so that's going to be 0.1. So that way when I draw my joints, they're going to be much smaller. And what I want to do is just kind of figure out where is that going to be located. I think here is pretty good, right down through the middle. And I'm going to draw just 2 joints, one here and one at the base of the fingers. Something that looks just like that. Because we're dealing with twist joints, it's very important that everything stays planar in a perfectly straight line between the main bending areas. To help do that, just drawing one big skeletal joint or bone will allow us to divide that up, keeping everything perfectly in alignment with one another. So next thing we're going to do is go into that skeleton menu. And we're going to insert some additional joints. So to insert new joints, we're going to use this option right here. And the way this works is you just kind of click on the joint you want to kind of insert from, and you just drag down, holding down that left mouse button. So what I'm going to do is draw my next one around here. And this is going to be around where that twisting is going to take place. For that, now it's a little bit off. If that's the case, I am going to have to just go back up to that top joint and just rotate this just a little bit so that it is in alignment with that seam that's there, so that when it rotates, it doesn't separate or anything like that. All right, so let's go back and insert some more joints. I'll need a elbow. And for this one, I'm going to align it with the peg, that basically, if it was real, that's where it would rotate from. And I'm going to draw another one down around the middle of the forearm. So this is where the forearm is going to rotate. And then from there, we're going to grab one for the wrist, which is a little bit off, actually. I'm going to have to split hairs, or I go back and remodel, just making sure those angles are the same, so that this angle and this angle here are the exact same kind of, are parallel to one another. So that way it'll be perfectly aligned. But I'm going to split hairs and just shift that just a little bit, so that is a little bit better down there. All right, so that's good. Yes?
What should we do if our arms already have a pose?
So there's already a bend in the arm.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing.
Add one and rotate it, and
Yeah.
add another one.
So if your arm already has a pose, I would do it a little bit different. Let me just do it on this arm here. So what I would do is start the exact same way. And then instead of going just down through everything like I did, I would go to my main bending areas first. So I would then go into, say, insert joint. I would go to the elbow next, and then the wrist, and then I would go and angle it so that it's matching whatever the orientation of my arms are. Making sure I'm only rotating it, excuse me, in Y in this case. So only rotating in Y. And I would just kind of match your angle that way. And once you have that, then you could go back in and divide things up a little bit further if you needed to have those twist joints.
Why only Y?
Because that's how your arm works. It only rotates on one axis at your elbow. So we want to make sure that if we are going to add in, say, IK, like we did with the legs, we want to make sure that the elbow just points straight back when it bends. Otherwise, you get some funky chicken kind of arms going on.
What if it's the leg that is bent?
Pardon me?
Like my legs are bent, but I'm posed, and like the hips are pointing out and the knees.
Right.
So would I only rotate in one?
Yeah, what you'll have to do is put in some test IK just to make sure that when it's moving, the knees point in the right direction. And then if it is, then you're good. If it's not, you just have to go back and reposition them. And, all right. Now, when you do have a bend, you do run that risk of things maybe not being in alignment with your controls. The good thing, though, about starting with a single joint like we did is that it actually ensures that all of the joints in between are aligned exactly to the initial joint. So everything, we don't really have to reorient any of our joints this way.
So if I'm not satisfied with the position of my joint, I can move them as well.
Yeah, you can move them. You'll have to, if you do move them though, you'll have to reorient them though.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so we got that. So this is a little bit further back. I will have to shift it forward a bit so it's in the middle of my geometry. There we go. Okay, good. We're ready. Ready to move on to the next thing. Whew, that was tricky. All right, so what we're going to do next is label this stuff. What's this one? Oh, that's the other arm. So I'm going to start by just doing a search and replace name. So let me see. I'm going to search for joint, and I'm going to replace it with JNT underscore JNT. All right, so apply. And then we've got our different, so this is the left side, so capital L underscore shoulder. Just get rid of the numbers at the end. Then we've got L upper arm, elbow, forearm, so your forearm, I guess. Let's see here. Oh, I got rid of that. Okay, so and it's one word, forearm, JNT. Wrist, and the final one is wrist end. So wrist end. All right, there we go. All right, so from here, what we need to do is duplicate this arm out. So this is the arm that's going to get bound. What we might want to do is actually do a test bind as well, just to make sure the joints do rotate properly. So maybe I'll just very quickly do that. So let me see. Also maybe set my preferred angle, because I did rotate and move things around. So once everything's in place. Freeze transformations, I should do that as well. So freeze trans. I need to freeze trans before binding it, because you can't freeze transformations on skeletons that have binding information. It's a preferred angle. All right.
Does it matter that the translate is not freezing?
Translates never freeze on a joint, because that's basically what tells it where it is in relation to the one above it. So if that was frozen, if I zeroed that, that would just send it back to origin. Or if I zero any of these guys, it would just kind of set them all up to that shoulder joint there. So. But the scales definitely need to be 1s, and the rotates should all be zeroed out. All right, so quick bind. So let's do this. So skin, bind skin. Whoops, undo. Let me just check my bind settings. So skin, bind skin, option box. Oh yeah, so just make sure you are using selected joints, 1, and just turn all those check boxes off. There we are. And I'm just hitting the G key as I go through this. All right. So now we've got this guy, which I'm going to want to move in Z and in Y. But I don't want this one twisting, otherwise we're going to see where the connection is. The twisting is going to happen on this joint. So that's going to be where the twisting takes place. So that's not too bad. Although I think it was a little bit better this morning. Anyhow, yes?
What if your character doesn't really have any
Yeah, so if your character is like a seamless thing where it's not nearly as complicated, let's just say 1 arm, we can just get away with three joints. So you have like a upper arm, forearm, and a wrist. So just the 3 joints. Yeah.
And you would, instead of do the selected joints, you would do by hierarchy?
No, you still want to do selected joints. Yeah, you want to be very specific when you're binding. Otherwise, it binds to your entire skeleton. Yeah. So like each of these, right, so if you had like a seamless piece of, you still might have additional skeletons controlling things. It's better to get in the habit of always using selected joints. So specifically selecting the joints that need to be bound and then binding those. So let's see, that's working okay a little bit. I can get away with that for now. We got a twist. It's working okay. And we got this guy here. And that's going to be okay once all that's painted and stuff. All right. So next thing we need to do is save. So increment and save. Yeah, so I have a smile on this one, but my arms this morning, I think I was just a little bit closer with the placement of the joints. It seemed to work a little bit, I think it's a little bit better. Let's see. Next thing we need to do is this. We need to go in and create a control arm that will allow me to do everything, all the different individual rotations, just with fewer controls essentially. So basically, I've got my main control here that does the rotates, only in 2 axes on this joint, and then gives me the twist on this joint over here. We've got this guy here that will twist the forearm a little bit, as well as control my wrist. And then we've got the elbow, which will only move in the 1 axis, which is Y. If I were to use IK for this setup, I would still do something very similar. So I would have a control arm controlling the multiple joints that we just created, but then you would have your IK handle that controls that arm. So it's a bit of a chain of things, but in this case, it's just FK. All right, so let's see. So back over here, we're going to duplicate that arm. There we are. So now we got 2 of them, and I'm going to isolate that duplicated arm. So we went through inserting joints. We can also remove joints, because now I just want to remove the joints. So I only have a shoulder, elbow, and wrist. I only want those three joints. So to do that, you select the joint you want to remove. So in this case, this guy. And we're going to skeleton, remove joint. And there we go, that's gone. And I also want to remove this twist joint here. And maybe this end joint here as well. So remove joint. There we go. So I just have those three joints. Now, when I duplicated it, these joints are perfectly oriented to the joint that has the arm that has the multiple joints, so the other arm, which is good. So we can basically do direct connections between these when we're connecting everything. So it's kind of the easiest thing we can do to connect two things, similar to what we did with the blend shapes when we're setting up our blend shapes. All right, but we need to have some controls on here. So that's the next thing we're going to do. So we got 6 minutes. I think we can do this here. So we want to add in our controls. So the controls basically, in this case, are the joint. So these look like curves. The shape node on these are technically curves, but when I select this, these are actually the joints that are being selected. These aren't curves anymore, really. So I'm going to set up something similar to this. So I'll need to create a circle first. There we are. There's my circle. And I'm going to snap this to, let me just isolate these guys. So I'm going to snap this to this. Now to snap it, I'm going to select my circle first. I'm going to select the joint second. I'm going to parent them, so P key. That's going to throw a whole bunch of values on here now. As soon as I zero those out, it's going to shift from being at origin to the joint. So it's going to align perfectly to that joint's orientation. And I'm just going to go in now and shape this. So let me see. Let me just shape that. Whoops. If you're going to shape things, though, don't forget, you want to do it on a shape level. So this is so let me go into hulls. Very similar to what we did with the chest, the spine controls the other day. There we go. And let me scale that down a bit, move it up a bit. And I'm just going to snap these guys. Just very simple, just a very, very simple kind of pin. There we go. Just move that back. Oops. Move that back down. There we go. So we got something that looks like this. Maybe I can move it just a little bit further away. There we go. So that's kind of sitting on top there.
How did you do the pin thing?
Yeah. I just went into my CVs, and then using the V key, I can snap them to one another. So I can create harder angles that way. So I was using the V key for a point snap. All right. So I'm going to duplicate that, Control D. And then I'm going to parent that one to the next joint, which is the elbow. So I'll do this through the outliner. Zero that.
For this control, you can control rotate 3 axes, right? How can you
Yeah.
raise one which the arm is not like that?
Yeah.
Because we don't show.
Sure. Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah. So let's create these controls. So my last one, here we are. I'm going to put this on the wrist. And again, I'm zeroing out the translates just so it pops into the proper position. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the shape node from this curve, and we're going to put the shape node to the joint. So when we select this, once this is done, we're basically selecting those joints, essentially. So to do that, it's really easy. I got to unparent my curves. That's going to give these a whole bunch of values. We're going to just leave those, because right now those values are still properly oriented to the joints that they're going to control. We're going to go into now normally I don't do this, but just so you can see what we're actually selecting, we're going to go into shapes. So we got our shape nodes here. And we're just going to select the shape node from the curve, and in the outliner, control click on the joint that it's going to be controlling. And we're going to type in a little mel command, which is this. I wonder if I should put it into WordPad or something so you can see it a bit better. And increase this. So we're going to type in parent minus R minus S. So basically it's parenting the shape node minus S, and it's going to keep its relative position minus R. So I'm going to put that in here and hit enter. There we go. So if I turn shapes off for a second, you can see now that that first one no longer has a joint icon, it has a curve icon. And then eventually we'll call it instead of a joint, a control, and basically is It's a joint control. In the exact same position as our skeleton. So once you get used to doing it, it's a very quick way to just match up what's controlling, and it allows for us to do direct connections, which again, it's a much faster way of working if we can do that. All right, so the next one, I'm going to select the shape node from, actually this one here. Now, I've turned shapes off. You can also select a shape node just by selecting the object and hitting the down arrow once. So that's the shape node. And then I'm going to control select the corresponding joint, the elbow in this case. I can redo my mel command by just clicking in the empty window, mel window, hitting the up arrow once, and that will allow me to redo that. And just lastly, just this last one here, same thing. I just hit the G key. That will also redo the last command. So.
What's the hotkey for the paste?
Yeah, just the up arrow, and it'll just bring it back.
Oh.
Yeah. If you have a lot of commands, you can just hit the up and down arrows to go through all of the list of commands that you've executed. Cool. So you can see that it's replaced all of my joints now with curves. So we just want to switch out the word joint with the word control, because these are now our controls. So I'm just going to search and replace joints with CTLs and apply. There we go. Get rid of that one at the end. All right. It's break time, but I just want to spend 5 minutes and just do the connections really quick. Super easy, and then we'll take a break. All right. So what we're going to do is select all of these, except for that end joint. That doesn't do anything. It doesn't really. We don't bind those usually either. It's really just more of a visual representation to show us the area where that joint is going to be controlling. But again, because that usually is outside of the influence of the geometry, this actually doesn't do anything. So we don't need to select that. We're going to go into our node editor. So the node editor is almost exactly like the hypershade, except there's no shaders or anything like that. So it's really just the work area of the hypershade, basically. It had started off as just being like, basically the hypershade was where we did all this stuff initially until they separated it out. So by selecting these first before opening the node editor, they're all in here. All of the joints are in here. And what I want to do is just kind of select I'm connecting rotations essentially. So I'm going to go in and just open everything up. And I can do that, yeah, with the 3 key. So it's just like polygons. You know, 1 is low res, 3 is smooth. So it's the same type of thing. So, and then 2 will just show direct connections. But so 1 is just the chain, and 3 shows everything. I'm just going to isolate out just the rotates, so ROT. And let me just isolate those out. And I'll do the same thing down here. So let me just hit 3. Whoops. There we are. Will it let me do it? Let me hit 3. There we go. And again, I'm just going to isolate out just the rotations. So I'm just copying and pasting the ROT into those. And let me open up my rotations. Now you don't have to do this, but I find it's just faster to see what I'm doing when it's isolated. All right, so we just got to figure out what gets connected to what. So we have our controller here. This is going to move on all axes, X, Y, and Z. But the one on that the shoulder is bound to, again, we only want it moving in Z and Y, forward and backward and up and down. We don't want it twisting. Otherwise, you know, it's going to twist out of its socket, essentially. So we're going to connect Y to Y. And Z to Z. There we go. Now the X is going to get connected to the next joint down here. So that's going to go to here. So X to X. So basically now we've got this controller that when I move it around, I can move my arm around, and basically that rotation is now happening, or that twisting is now just happening right here in that second arm. So I still get a full degree of motion out of that. All right, so let's zero that out. Just the rotates. Next one is the elbow. That's just a hinge joint, just like in real life, and it is here too. It's just a hinge. So Y to Y. There we go. And for the wrist, this is going to control the twist in X. So twist in X. Whoops, make sure I'm, there we go. And then it's also going to control the Y and Z of the wrist joint. So it's going to control this joint here's Z value, X value, so some twisting. And then the Y, sorry, that's the Z and Y is going to be just on the wrist joint itself. Cool. So now we've got an arm that, so the last thing I want to do, that's done. Let me bookmark that. You could always bookmark and go back to connections you made in case you need to tweak things down the road by going to the bookmark tab, create bookmark, or just use this button right here. And I'll just call this left arm, connections. So if I do clear that out, I can always go back here and bring it back again. Although it didn't isolate my rotates. That's irritating. That's okay. I don't need it anymore anyway. But lastly, last thing is just isolating out attributes that I don't want to key. So in this case, the translates have those values because they were joints. They still are technically joints. And scale, so I want to select all that stuff. I just want rotates available. So I'm going to select all those attributes and lock and hide. Lock and hide them so only the rotate ones are visible. For the elbow, again, we just want rotate Y visible. So let me hit G to redo that. And the wrist should be right as well. All right, so let's take a 15-minute break. When we come back, we're going to go through those fingers. Yeah, fingers. In a good way. All right, let's take some questions. I'll work my way around. Hey, that's cool.
I feel like I need to spend the whole day watching back all the recordings and understand each sentence. Do that for different episodes.
scanning the UDEMs.
Yeah, I selected that.
Are the UDEMs properly labeled?
Yep. I was doing naming the body, like naming body. I was really the substitute. Then my import doesn't like one select import one, so use and the rest and I hit
刚买 S 开个号。
Right, so if you don't want to bend it, you're going to have to go 100% white. Well, for a delta mushroom, but for squiggles, it's just 50%. So you go to all right. What's up, guys? Hey, you guys. I'm working my way over. You guys are next. How about this?
What do you find? What happened?
Started again. Okay, get those fingers going on. Well, yeah, like we only have an hour left. I did record the fingers this morning, so you guys could always check that out if you want. But anyhow, let's okay.
What's the right order to have the unit?
Right, so you need to select the shape node, the curve first. Yeah, the shape node. So right now you have the transformation of something. Yeah. peasy.
No.
Okay.
I'll leave that.
I follow it.
Awesome. Man. He's looking awesome.
I did the IT as you suggest.
Right.
So
It worked.
correct? Oh.
Are you sure there's IK on there?
I'm pretty
Still crashed. I don't want to follow it.
worried.
No, I already opened it.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
It's not like really rough. It's on the right.
Just want to make sure the pivot though is probably where it's going to bend from. So maybe
No,
snap.
it's three. We have to us.
Snap is bend.
Yours is 3-1 for your. It's like every time I look at it, they're pretty cool.
It's like,
So this will allow you to rotate from there. Then you can also take it. There's no other rotating, but it's up here. So what I suggest you doing is adding your IK. Just do these 2 points right here. So where let's go to here. Maybe yeah, you can go right here.
Yeah, exactly what I think.
Just like both of those guys. Now basically this will allow you to rotate it. And then you can also grab it and move this.
So why select why when I select the controller, it doesn't work?
I'm selecting the controller. Well, you're selecting a different one.
Oh.
I'm selecting this. Yeah.
Right. And then so I can delete it.
Or keep it.
But it's not working.
It does. It rotates from this one. No one rotates from this one. It's a bit different.
But you just create a new IT controller.
Yeah, two IK handles. So one from here to here, and from here to whatever platform it is. And then pairs both of those to that.
Then my previous created the IT. Oh, you delete that.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. I just want to figure out what's the right
Yeah, we might want to put on some stretchy joints, right? Or stretch a little bit? I mean, let's throw it up.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What's my next question? Okay, then my question for you and the eyes.
Just give me 1 second. So let me pause the recording. There we go. There we go. All right. So let's see here. So under content, you should all have this. Basically, it's the module 2 interstitial toy. And it has the rubrics there, obviously, and it also has the information that you need for the submission. So for this, I'll need a 360-degree redshift render, 360 movie, uploaded to Shotgun. This QuickTime, that's fine, but uploaded to Shotgun, I'll just look at it there. I'll show you guys how to do a 360 turntable that was recorded this morning as well. For the actual files that I want submitted to here in Slate, your My Project, but the only 3 folders that should be in there are these guys right here. So in the My Project, you're going to have, let me see here, where's my project? All right, so you'll have your project properly labeled. In there, you'll have a scenes folder, which should only have one Maya file. It'll be whatever your most recent version is with the rig, and everything's labeled properly. So that should be there. And then you'll have a source images directory. Source images will only be your substance UDIMs, your files, your texture files. I don't need to see the substance file itself. They're quite large files. I won't download it, so just the textures. And then you're also going to have a references folder where you're going to have all of your toy pictures and stuff that you use for modeling. So, and that's it. So those things. And we went over the rubric last class. So just double check. From what I've seen, you guys are all doing really good. Like even if you don't quite finish your animation setup, you'll still get great. Well, try to get as far as you can, but you'll still get marks if there's elements, especially if it's labeled and everything. Make sure everything's labeled and organized. But you'll all have UV mapping. For what I've seen, for the most part, your modeling geometry, your quality is really good. How close to the toy it is, that might vary a little bit, and I've mentioned that you can kind of over texture things if you want to make it look better, and that's cool. I'm good with that, so that'll go well. The animation setup, it's see what you can do. You don't have to have the animated textures for the face for the Monday, so just the body stuff that we've talked about, just so that you can start posing and doing layouts down the like in week 8 or later next week would be awesome. And, yep. The turntable, yeah. So to do a turntable, it's pretty straightforward. I'll run through this. It's also recorded this morning, so you'll have a rig in your character, so you might want to maybe pose it. That'd be awesome. Maybe give it a base, similar to how I set this up when I showed you those stills and everything. So that's cool. So bring up your, let's see, maybe in HD, 1080. So let me see here, 1080. I just passed it. It could be 2K, whatever you want, but just make sure it's framed properly in there. For the length of your turntable, 3 seconds is probably good, so 75, it's not exactly 3 seconds, but you can round it to 75 frames. Say something like that. And then you just select. So in terms of grouping and labeling, we kind of finished things off this morning. It's in the video. This is kind of what I want to see. So you'll have your, it's going to be very clean. You'll have maybe your dome light, sure, that's fine. That's kind of there. You can get rid of the lights if you want to. I'm not going to be checking that out. But basically you'll have your group, which is your character's name. Under that you'll have a geometry group, which is just all of the geometry. And you'll have a rig group, which is all of the rigging components. And then all of that is kind of what we've covered so far, with the exception of fingers, which we haven't really talked about, but again, that's recorded. So for the turntable, just select the top of the hierarchy. The pivot for that should just be at origin, so it's fine. We go over to our animation module here. There's this visualize menu. And we just want to turn on create turntable. There's an option box that'll automatically take on whatever your frame range is set to, but you can modify that if you want to. And then you can choose clockwise or counterclockwise and apply. And there we go. Now the problem with this though, which I wouldn't use this just as it is that it eases in and eases out. So it wouldn't really cycle if you wanted to put it on your demo reel or have it like running on your computer at industry day or something like that. So what I would do is select the group that gets created, which is right here. So as a group has a camera under it, that's what it basically is, just the group rotating. There's a animation in the rotate Y. So just go into your graph editor or the dope sheet, doesn't matter, you can do it in both. Just go with the graph editor, select your curve, and just make it linear. So once you've done that, you're good to render it, and it'll just seamlessly loop. 3 seconds, if you're finding that's a little bit fast, 3 seconds is fine. If you want to go a bit longer, that's cool too. Just do some math though, because you want to see. Wow. Okay. Jump scare. Cool. recording. I know there's a couple questions out there still, so I'll try to get to you guys in a second. Are there any other questions though about what needs to be done? So midnight. Monday at midnight. Yeah. So let me change that right now in the Dropbox because it still says midnight Friday. So let me do this.
12 o'clock on.
Why don't I just make it next year, 2020? And, no. You'll never get anything done if I did that.
12 o'clock on the 20th.
21st at midnight. Oh, you're right. I can't go midnight. Let's see. So it'll have to be.
11:59.
So it'll be 12 a.m. on the 22nd. So I think that's right. So that's midnight on the Monday, essentially. Yeah. And update. All right. So I just have to remember to do that for the other group. Otherwise, theirs is due tomorrow still. I don't know. Just kidding. Other group, if anybody's in here. Okay. Question. Yep.
Is that the logo all have to include the revenue?
Sorry.
Means the project. When we upload, we have to include the revenue or just the logo?
The rigging as well. So however far you get with it, even if you don't quite get it all finished, just make sure you label whatever you do have and upload it so you get partial grades, but it should have rigging as well. Yeah. Yeah, as far as you can get with that. Now, if you don't quite get it finished, you should have it ready to go for week 8, right in the beginning. So that gives you 1 week to animate your entire interstitial so that in week 9 it can be reviewed by Drew, because you'll have a class for that. So, yeah. So if you have it ready to go for Monday, that gives you the rest of the week to animate and block things in and stuff like that. So not a lot of time, but the good news is that when it's done in week 10, you'll have lots of time to get on to the next step of getting your pitch package together and all that stuff, which is a huge undertaking, getting your design package together for the capstone. So, yeah. So, yeah. Cool. Don't forget, I forgot to mention it to the other group. I might have to post it on, I'm making an announcement. But don't forget to come up with an idea for your ZBrush model for when we come back. We're going to get right into ZBrush. Question, yes?
Already be a 3D character.
Well, it's going to be your own design, so...
So it has to be like your character that we create?
Yeah.
Oh.
Something of your own making that you're going to model, so...
Also, what were the groups called again for Maya?
Which groups?
The model group and then...
Oh, yeah, okay. So we've got...
Rig. Okay.
Yeah, right here. So we got the main name of the character, underscore group, geometry underscore group, and rig underscore, yes, question. Okay. Wow. Okay, I'm not going to get that ringing out today. I don't think so. Okay. Sorry, question.
With the ZBrush scope, can we do a bust and arm?
Right. Yeah, so it can be a bust. It could just be, so you don't have to model an entire character for this one. It's a lot of work for 3 weeks to do a full detailed character. So,
Do a bust and floating arms?
what do you mean by floating arms?
Just from here to here. And it's just doing like a gesture, but then you just, so you don't have that attachment or with the attachment.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds creative. Maybe that's okay. Sure. I don't know. I'd have to see what your design looks like, but it sounds like, yeah, why not? Could be.
Sculpture have to do their final.
No. You could use it as a way to prototype your final a little bit, but no, it doesn't have to be. Yeah. So it gives you a chance now to be a little bit more creative. So let's see here. It doesn't have to be a human either. It could be a creature, whatever you design. try to minimize the number of pieces, but you know, like a bust like any of these seem to be reasonable in terms of, could be stylized, doesn't have to be realistic. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, it could be, obviously this has been retopologized or maybe even modeled in Maya possibly, but.
You said we could use Maya first?
No, for this one, we're going to be doing everything directly in ZBrush.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it could be like more of a stylized type character as well. But it should be a character of some kind, because we're going to get more into organic modeling at this point. So far, we've been doing mostly hard surface modeling. So this is going to be more character-based stuff. So I think this is neat with the octopus. That's kind of cool. So yeah, so this type of thing you want to kind of avoid where there's just too many pieces, because to texture all that stuff, well, you know, it would take some time. Maybe it's not too bad, but try to be reasonable with the number of components, because we're only going to have 6 classes in 3 weeks for this in total. So you do want to be realistic with.
Are we going to also texture the sculpture in ZBrush?
Right, yeah, so that's going to be part of it, is going through ZBrush's texturing. Now, the problem with ZBrush is that, unlike, say, Substance Painter, you can't really break out the individual channels easily, so like the roughness and metallic and all that stuff. So we'll go through polypaint and color texturing. We still might want to embellish things maybe in Substance, or at bare minimum, we might have to tweak or create custom roughness or metallic maps that we. It's better for painting. It's definitely better for painting textures, but again, breaking out the individual attributes we need to define what the material is. Now, a lot of that can just be in the texturing itself, and then manually tweaking the materials in Maya once we bring it over there. But we can also take these things right from ZBrush directly into Substance Painter as well to enhance if we want to as well. So that's an option that you guys could do too. Because as we learn these new packages, you know, how you combine how things are done, that's going to be up to you to a certain degree. And it doesn't have to be, the final render doesn't have to be solely everything created in ZBrush. We could do a bit of a mixture of stuff, but it's kind of neat. Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking for a reference, definitely check out ArtStation or go on to Pinterest and see what's there. Your illustration that you're going to come up with the design, you know, you guys all have art backgrounds. I realize not all of your backgrounds are character based, so you could definitely take reference of something that exists and kind of make it your own version of that if you're not like particularly good with character design aspects as well. So
We need to come up with sketches of our design.
your own design. Yeah, something rough, because we'll kind of take it and run in ZBrush with it, but just something where it'll give you an idea of where you're going to go with that. So, and I have to do the same thing as well, so I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but something. All right, so check out that stuff. All right, so I changed your due date. I got to do that let me just do the other group really quick, and then we'll get started again. So fingers, I did record that. I just want to kind of show you where we're going to go with the fingers and how we can set that up. I created a script this morning, which is part of the recording as well. But I'm curious, I just want to execute the script this afternoon, just so it just automatically does all the attaching and stuff, but yeah.
Did you want us to erase your fingers before we edit?
Yeah, so if your character does have fingers, like even paws, you might not have, say, 3 joints. You might just have 1 joint for each finger. You're going to want to have at least a control for each one. So, you know, one control. But if you wanted to follow the video and create like on-surface controls that move with the attributes, then just follow the video from this morning. And it's super easy stuff. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just do one quickly. It'll take about 10-15 minutes, and then the video from this morning has everything else on it. So let me just do this quick. So content. All right. Let me do this first. Due date. Oh wait, Oh, did I just go right into the same one again? I did. Stupid me. Was that's this morning's group? I think that's this morning. Let's find out. I probably just keep clicking on the same one over and over again. I did. All right. So I changed this morning's group. I didn't change yours. So let me change your hand in. Yeah. So let me do this. So that's the midnight on the 21st. And let me just update that. There we go. So that way everything's good. That was easy. I should do that all the time. Just keep changing dates. And, super easy. All right. So the recording, I'll upload those at the very end. All right. So the fingers. Let's do one, and then we'll kind of go from there. And I'll circulate. I know there's a couple questions that people on this side had, and then I'll just kind of walk around for the last little bit. All right, so where is my file? Here it is. All right, so this is all ready to go. This is good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of these arm skeletons that I have, and I'm going to group them together. I am, yes. Good call, though. Always, yeah. And then L_arm group. There we go. So the finger, so I have this still from last class, so that connect group from before. I'm going to create my fingers from this. Now my finger is going to be bending in Z. So what I'm going to do is just go into the hulls for that circle there. And I'm just going to create a very simple finger control for this. And again, I'll just snap these points together, just create a bit of an arrow. Kind of like a pin. There we go. All right, let's go with something like this for now. All right, so we got that. So I'm going to grab that connect group, and I'm going to move it up to the hand. There we go. And just make sure it's going in through the middle. Now remember, when you're doing this, just like the spine, you are moving only that connect group. Now, if you look at your hand, when your fingers bend, they don't just bend at the crease where they kind of come out of the hand. This portion of the palm also kind of bends down with them. So typically, you're going to want to place that first joint just a little bit higher up into the palm area. When we get a bit more advanced, we'll have tendon joints as well, so we get a little bit more flexibility in through the palm. But we don't really need it for the toy. So let me just move that just a little bit higher. I'm going to label this. I'm going to call this index. So let me see. Which I didn't do this morning. I labeled it all at the end, so it took a little bit longer. So we can speed things up here. So let me add in a prefix. Index. There we go. And I'm going to duplicate it. I've got my object mode turned on for my translates. So I can just slide this forward. And I'm going to create one more duplicate. There we go. And let's see. So in terms of placement, I'm just going to try to find where the knuckles are. So the one here, and there's one going to be around here. So let me just move these up here. And I'm not going to really change. I'm not really going to change the angle just at the moment until I kind of combine it all and maybe duplicate it a few times. And that joint at the end, I didn't do this morning, but if you want, you could also maybe just create one additional joint just so you can see where the fingertips are. If you ever have to animate with the skeleton only visible, it just makes it easier just to see where the connections might be with objects and whatnot. So I'm just going to parent this guy here. All right. And then I'm going to parent this stuff together. So just like the spine, we're going to take the connect node of one and parent it to the control of the one above it. So again, we're taking the connect node and parenting it to the control. So if I were to select all these controls now, I have like an F, whoop, I don't think I did that right. Let's see, got this. Yeah, I guess I didn't parent that. So let me do this again. So take the connect node of 1 and parent it to the, there we go. So now I've got some bending I can do with that. There we go, that's pretty good. I just have to label this stuff. So everything's index, but these guys here should be, well actually this will be index 1, index 2, and index 3. So I'll just do a search and replace name. So we're going to be replacing index with index 1. I'm going to make sure that instead of using hierarchy, I'm using selected. So it just affects my selected controls. This will be index 2. And this one will be index 3. And we just want to get rid of the numbers for the groups here. All right, there we go. All right, once that's done, I got 1. I'm going to duplicate it. So Control D, and I'm just going to move it across. I'm just going to duplicate 5 of these. So 4 fingers. For the thumb, we're going to also have 3 joints as well. The first joint will be the pad of the thumb, which gives us the full rotation in through here. And then we get the two joints on the outside for the knuckle. So let me just move this down here.
And it doesn't matter spacing between them? For example, if he's smaller?
It is, but I haven't done that yet. So yeah. So it is smaller, but what kind of gives the illusion that fingers are longer and shorter, which in theory they are. Everybody's a little bit different, but there is a bit of a curvature to the hand. So the pinky actually sits lower on the hand, which gives it the feeling like it's a little bit shorter than the other fingers. Technically, I guess it is slightly shorter than the other fingers, but I'm curious now. No, I think they're almost all very similar in length if you were to actually take them physically and move them side by side one another. This guy, though, the palm is perfectly straight because that's how the toy was. And then there is some slight size changes. So yeah, I'm going to have to go through. First of all, just make sure that all those fingers are in the middle of my geometry. So let me just make sure that that is happening. So let me see here. All right, so I think that's kind of in the middle. All right. This one is a little bit longer, so I'm going to just take, and I'm selecting the control, but I'm just going up 2 levels with the up arrow, so I can just shift these just around just a little bit. Actually, let me just making sure I'm on the connect node. All right, let's go like that. And let's see with this guy. Well, that's going to be almost the same as the index, and then this one's just a little bit shorter. Move that. Move that. All right, so let's say that's good. Thumb, I didn't really 100% model it this way, but it's actually rotated in slightly about. It's on a slight angle in so that when it bends, if you were to bend it, it goes towards the edge of your hand under the pinky there. And it is on typically a 45-degree angle down. So I just want to make sure that I'm matching that with my joint placement here. So somewhat. It's not quite like that though. It is kind of angled a little bit less than ideally, but that's fine. I might go back and fix up the hands actually. And let's see, we got a joint here. Uh-oh. I actually physically moved that, so let me just zero that back out. Did I do it? Yeah, cool stuff. Joint here-ish, maybe just a little bit more forward. And then I'm going to just angle that down just a little bit. And then this joint here, And move that a little bit. And then just angle that down just a bit. All right. So I have to rename these guys. So this one here is, so we have index, middle. So just switching out index with middle, and then everything else should just be properly labeled. So there's that. Get rid of the 1 at the end. This one's going to be, hierarchy. Make sure hierarchy's on. This one is going to be the ring finger. So ring, and apply. This one's the pinky finger, and apply. And then we have our thumb. All right, so that's a lot faster than this morning because I left the labeling to the very end, and it took a few extra minutes there. So apply. All right. So for setting up our attributes, what I'm going to do is on my wrist here, I'm going to add in, so we just have rotations at the moment, similar to what we did with the blend shapes. So I'm going to add in a divider, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and non-keyable, so it's just displayable. And we're just going to add in all of our curls. So we have index curl with no minimum, maximum, set to float, so we get decimal point values. We're going to go and do a middle, all camel case, curl, ring, camel case, curl, pinky, and thumb. We also started setting up a spread, but you guys could just take the on hand controls and spread them out manually if you need to for now. We'll add spreads and things like that when we get a bit more advanced. It's easy to do, but thumb. Roll. All right. So we got these guys. So what we did was we basically just connected these directly to the rotate rotate Z. So that basically that one attribute drives the rotate Zs on all 3 of these orient controls. And as we were doing this in the node editor, and this is where you can kind of check things out, basically we were, let me clear this up. We were grabbing the information we were using and then storing it so that we can then just switch some names and then have the other ones automatically get connected. So basically, everything we do in Maya, so for example, I want to maybe parent all these fingers here, so let me, yeah, maybe I'll do that at the end, because that might mess up the script I have. Maybe it's okay. But let's say I wanted to parent all these guys and name them, so I could just group them together. Control G. Let's see, why are you not? I feel like something's happening over here. Let's see. Control G. There we go. Actually, we'll come back to this. Let's just do this instead. So, just because I want to use my script and I don't think I had parented them already, might change the hierarchies. Should be okay though. But let's say I just move this down a little bit. So essentially everything I do gets added to this top portion of our script editor, which is just this button right here to open it up. I could always go in and copy and paste that, and I can re-execute that. So let's say I want to do the exact same thing over on this side. All I have to do is change the name. So instead of a capital L, I just switch that over to a capital R. And if I select that script, I can execute my highlighted area just by going Control Enter. And as long as everything's labeled the same, or if there was a skeleton there, which there's not, then it would just do the exact same thing on the other side. So maybe a better example would be something like this, maybe. Let me just clear this out with this little X. So if I grab this guy and shift this guy just a little bit, again, I could repeat that just by replacing these L's. So there we go. And I can execute that. So Control Enter. And then I can very quickly, now why would you do that? Well, it's very simple, but when we get into more complex things, then we could bring our text into, say, something like Sublime Editor, which is it's basically a scripting tool that allows us to modify and edit text. And in here, so this is part of the finger connections we did this morning. Control H allows me to very quickly go in and select. So for example, if I wanted to replace the thumb, as I'm typing that in, you can see that it starts highlighting all of the words that have that name on it, so thumb. And let's say I want to replace that and change it to index. So index. So replace all. So I can very quickly kind of replace all the connections I want to make. So for example, I have this script from this morning. So basically, as I'm rigging one finger, I'm just taking the information that I've rigged and just adding it down here. So I ended up getting something that looks like this. So basically, I did my initial index curl and made all the connections in the node editor, which is on video from this morning. And then I just duplicated it out a few times and did a search and replace every time, and so I have every finger there. So let me just zero this hand back here. So zero that out. So as long as my naming convention stays consistent, I can essentially just execute this script. So again, Control Enter. And if I don't get any errors, then my connections are made. So now if I go in here, there we go, got all my connections already done for me. So it's already there, and I can reuse this. So when we get into fingers, next half, we're going to do the advanced thing, I can just reuse the script. I won't have to go through how to do that because I already have it done. So we might want to add in some additional elements like maybe tendon controls or finger spreads and things like that. But the finger curl aspect's already done from what I did today. I can reuse the exact same script. So again, I would suggest watching that just so that you can see how that was done this morning. Let me just go in and just move that just a little bit more into the middle of my geometry. All right, so once that's all done, I'm going to just take all those fingers, group them together, call those fingers. So left finger group. That's going to go under the wrist here. So now when I move this, all that stuff stays together. And we're just going to take that left arm group, and we're going to duplicate special. So edit, duplicate special, option box. Just making sure that input graph is turned on. And we're going to search and replace and change all the names. So capital L's for capital R's. And then I can just mirror that over. So -1. So now we've got my two arms, and both of these, if I grab both of those controllers, we got our finger controls on both now. We can very quickly go in and offset everything. There we go, that's good. And then these guys just go under the chest control. So that when I move my chest around, then all that stays connected. I would still have to go in and bind the fingers over here. And again, that was part of the video this morning. I won't do that right now because we're running low on time. But then, the very last thing we need to do is just finalize the rig by coloring our joints, which again is on the video. We also want to create a master control, which is essentially just a circle where we freeze transformations on it, delete history, all that stuff, call it master control, master CTL. We can group that to itself. That group can be called rig group. And then under the master control, we're going to put the left and right foot controls, the groups, the COG connect group, and then that rig group is going to go under the lone survivor group. But I do have all my geometry here, so let me just ungroup that. So, just group all that together. And we'll call that one geometry group. And then that rig group gets put under there too. All this stuff is probably just leftover things I can delete. So essentially, this is what our outliner should look like once we're all done. So we just have our character group, and then under that we have the rig, and then the geometry as a separate section. Coloring the joints, again, I go through that this morning. It's really easy though, just very quickly, just 2 minutes, and then there's a longer version this morning. You just want to go into the select the master control, go into its transformation node. You can do this on a shape level and on a global level on the transform, so under display. So typically what we do with coloring is all of the middle joints or middle controls are typically yellow, like a nice bright color that you can easily see and select. The left side, or the right side, let's start there, is usually a red color. So this is a little bit of an off red, but that's fine. We can actually do RGB, full RGB colors now. Before it had to be index colors. So I prefer using that just because it can get a little more creative with the coloring. But red for right. Some studios like ILM, they do green for the left side. I find green is a little confusing though because green is also the color of selections. So sometimes it's difficult to see if it's selected or not, even though it's a slightly different shade of green. So usually I do blue for my left side. And some models you'll see that, or some models you'll see green, but it's basically up to the studio. But again, I prefer blue because it's clearly different than green. So I can see if it's selected or not selected. Yeah, so you just go in, change the colors down here under drawing overrides, enable overrides, RGB, and then we can just choose our color here. Now that's going to color everything, and then you just go group by group, doing the exact same thing. So again, left side is blue. Let me use RGB colors. And the right side is going to be red. Cool, and that's pretty much it in terms of selecting things. So that's pretty straightforward. And then you just do the same thing for the right side, and that's all in the video from this morning as well. Cool. So let me save this because I do have some face shape stuff that we did, so it's a little bit different. So I'm going to save that out. You can also mirror. I didn't mention this. We talked about mirroring weights. You can also mirror individual objects that aren't connected as well, the weights on those. You just have to select the good one first, the one you want to copy to second, and then it's the exact same thing we did earlier with the t-shirt, or with the shirt. So just mirror it. All right, so let me save. And I'm just going to float around and take questions and stuff like that. Cool, question?
My question is I have an name.
Okay, what was it again?
The eyes and the belt.
Right, so for the eyes, what are you going to do?
I want the eyeball can move around, just like you showed to the Swiss model.
Oh, yeah, that's
cool.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so all these eyes will show together with the direction.
All right, so the question is about eyeballs. So if you have eyeballs that aren't textures, you could do this. So basically you'd have your geometry. Let's pretend this is our eyeball here. Let me do this. It's pretty close. All right. And just so that we know, this is let me just extrude this in just a bit. All right, so let's pretend this is our eyeball. So we've got a couple options. One, we could put a joint right in the middle of that guy. Let me freeze trans. Let's pretend this is exactly where I want it to be. So we can put a joint in the middle of a selected piece of geometry by selecting that geometry and typing in joint, I think. I haven't done this in a while. Let's try it out. It didn't work. Never mind. Ignore that. Ignore that. Let me unparent that. So what I'm going to do instead is just position it directly in the middle of this geometry by selecting the geometry first, the joint second, and going to constrain, point. There we go. So I'm just adding a point constraint that I'm just going to go in and delete right after. So a point constraint is basically something that will have one object move with the other object without actually physically having them in the same hierarchy. So we've got this guy now in the middle. So I'm going to bind the eyeball to that. Whoops, bind it. So skin, bind skin. All right, so we got this joint. Next thing I'm going to do is create something for that joint to look at, like maybe an arrow. So to create an arrow, I'm going to go to my create. You can use a locator or something like that too. I like using arrows. I'll just create a linear curve. So let me just go into my side view. Use my point snap, so X, so it snaps to the grid. So I got an arrow. Center the pivot on that. Maybe change the pivot so it's at the base of the arrow. So again, I can just snap it with X. There we go.
It's recorded, right?
Yes. All right, so we have this, and we have this. So to have this move with our, or look at this, so we're going to be using a constraint. Basically, it's like a look at constraint. It's called an aim constraint, this guy right here. So what we do with constraints is kind of the opposite of parenting. So you select the child first, you select the parent second. I lied. Select the parent first, the child second, because it's the opposite of parenting. And then you go to constrain, aim option box. Now, this kind of sounds tricky, but we just have to choose the right aim vector. So the aim direction that's going to be pointing towards the object that it's going to be constrained to. So in this case, Z, positive Z is the value that we want to constrain. So the aim vector is Z in positive, so 0 at the X value. And the up vector is Y, so Y is pointing up. So up vector is Y, so that's already set. And we go apply. Because this wasn't perfectly positioned, I should have maybe snapped it to the constraint or to the joint and then just moved it straight out. There was a little bit of a shift, that's why that happened. So now this is going to be always looking over at my control. Another thing I like doing is having my control point in the direction that the eye is looking at, or the knees looking at, or elbows are aimed in. So I do the exact same thing, except the opposite. So basically this is going to be aimed back at my eye, but not the pointy part, the flat part is going to be aimed back at the eye. So it's going to look like it's pointing out. So to do that, it's the exact same thing. So constrain, aim, option box. And so in this case, it's negative Z, because it's the back side of that triangle is going to be aiming back. There we go. And again, if this was better aligned, it wouldn't shift at all. So now when that moves around, I can see what direction that eye is moving in. So yeah, there we go. I would do it like that.
If it's two eyeballs, it's connect to the same.
Yeah, if there's two eyeballs, what I would do is I would take my stuff here, group them together, call that maybe a left eyeball. You know, maybe I'll throw the geometry in for now. Obviously it wouldn't be, but for this, I'll just so we can see the results right away. And then duplicate special. So that has input connections turned on. So edit, duplicate special. That's interesting. I'm not sure why it's shifting like that. I'm not sure why that shifted. I didn't perfectly. Let me take that geometry out. Now, a couple things I didn't do. I didn't freeze transformations and all those things I should have done. Looks like there's some keys on there too. I don't know how that happened. Let me undo that. All right. I must have keyed that. I can tell I've keyed it because the constraint's green, and then we have the standard key colors on there. If that ever happens, that will override your constraint, so it'll no longer work properly, typically. So you just have to go into your dope sheet and delete whatever key is there. So dope sheet. I don't know how that happened. There we go. So that's good. That's good. All right, let's try this again. So edit, duplicate special. There we go. Now to move this, now unfortunately if I just move everything together, there's a double transformation that will happen probably. There we go. So you can see that shifting that apart. You can always turn off inherit transforms on your geometry, something we haven't really looked at. So basically under your transformation node, you got this little checkbox here. So if you want to move a whole bunch of stuff together, but you don't want to worry about double transformations, you can just turn off inherit transforms on things like the skin cluster, for example, on the bound geometry, and that will prevent it from getting that double transformation information. So now we got two eyes that we can grab these two and move them together. And we can move them closer in together if we want to, or move them further out if we want to, and much more customized, or I can have one kind of animating one way while the other one kind of animates the other way, and a bunch of stuff.
I just only want one controller for my two eyes.
Yep, so in that case, I would do something a little bit different. I would keep the individual controllers, because you should always have individual controls. But I would also go in and maybe add in one more controller. So let me see here. So where? So again, center pivot on that, freeze trans, all that jazz. And here are my eyes over here. So obviously we would try to keep this symmetrical. I would never kind of just set it up asymmetrically like that, or offside. So let's pretend this is symmetrical. So that would go in the middle. And I use my Star Wars reference, make a little TIE fighter type of thing. If this was more in the middle, that would be better, but okay, close enough. Freeze trans, and then we just take these guys and parent them to this guy. So it's going to look like a Star Wars targeting system once it's all done. So as I move this around, those are going to angle in the direction the eyes are going to angle, but I can move them together. And then, if I had orient nodes on top of those controls, then I can maybe create a slider to have the eyes become a little bit more close-set or farther away, just all in the one control if I wanted to. But then also be able to control them individually as well. So, yeah, neat stuff. All right, that's awesome. That's fun. Question over here. Okay, there was a couple questions here first from which sort?
I kind of screwed up my model and it's not going back.
In a good way?
What?
In a bad way. In a bad way. Let me come over there in 2 seconds, just because there were some people patiently waiting from earlier, and then just hold on, and I'll come over here. Yeah. Hey, what's up? How's it going? UVs are shifting. Oh, right, with that. under skeleton orient joint, like what we did in last class. Yeah. And then it'll just automatically. I wanted it this way. Yeah, and then just right. No, it's cool. Right, that's what happens. Right, this one. I have an idea. For this one. It's really work. Right. Can you give me that file? I'll put it on the big screen. You send me your file into the Dropbox, so I'll put it on the big screen. Sorry. Hey, that's fine. Yeah, that's probably from, did you import a file or something? Or did that? Oh, gotcha, yeah, I can use that. Just whatever the object is. Yeah, it's totally fine. Python's good. Hyper organized, I've seen a long time. Yeah. Cool, that's cute. Spot drop. Yeah. Is it symmetrical? If your model isn't perfectly symmetrical. Let me see. Right, so I can see he's on.
So we should do the problem.
Yes, you see how it's not quite. What we should probably do is just drop.
Yeah, freezing.
And then just quadra just the one side. It's supposed to do this.
Cruising.
And then what we'll do is we'll mirror it over to the other side and then merge this and we'll make it symmetrical. So unfortunately, yeah, because it is a little bit off. Right.
Can you stop recording and upload?
Oh yeah, let me do that. And then